What are we doing?
We've got a couple things. I think the first thing we want to talk about for me, and I know you do too, is the bombings in Yemen and the implications sort of across the board of.
Well, I wish the bombings in Yemen was the interesting part of the story.
Well, it's an interesting part to start with in my mind.
Yes.
Because one, the idea of what the Trump administration ran on, and I think a lot of the people behind them, and I don't know if you watched recently, like Bill Maher had mega communist liar pieces of shit on there saying how exciting it was that Trump was not going to take us into another war and how he's not going to do that. And lo and behold, I think it was like within 20 minutes or something of that episode airing, we were bombing Yemen in the Middle East because the Trump administration is not anti-war in any capacity. And so in Yemen, and Sunday, I'm going to read out this part. You can get to the interesting one if that works for you, because the bombings themselves are fascinating. The first thing to understand about everything about Yemen is that we have been in a protracted war with them since Obama. And when I say protracted war with them, I mean we've been effectively using siege tactics and war crimes to starve the Yemeni people and murder them at large in one of the more horrifying sort of displays of American hegemony that there is globally. Like, I don't like it's to start with, and the numbers of dead are untold. And so here we are again. Yemen's Houthi rebels were pounded by the U.S. airstrikes, and these strikes have entered the 10th day without a sign of stopping as of the 24th today. So we've been actively for the last 10 days bombing the shit out of multiple places in Yemen that are civilian controlled. In order to protect maritime trade is what we ostensibly say.
Can you quickly, I see that we haven't posted the Associated Press article into the submissions check. Can you put that there so I can just read along with you?
Yes. Are you not able to see the screen?
I can see the screen, just I'm assuming you wanted me to read a part of it, so I'm assuming that I need to be able to see the part I'm reading.
This is the less important part, because all of this is the Nation article is the one that I'm going to sort of pass off to you. One sec. Because all of these bombings and everything that's been happening, the more interesting part of all of this is a piece from the editor of the Nation that came out. And it's really hard.
Was it the Nation or was it the Atlantic?
The Atlantic, sorry. The Atlantic.
Yeah.
And Sunday, if you will, since you're the one who did bring this article up, and we both are a little stunned by the entire thing.
Yeah, so I'm just waiting for this to load because the actual thing's paywall. This is driving me crazy. Why is this taking so long to load? There we go. Trump administration is apparently using some kind of encrypted group chat software app thing. What is it called? It's
this would be Signal, is what they're using.
Signal.
People have misstated in other articles that it's WhatsApp because
of the Israel thing, because they were using that to coordinate strikes on October 7th. But this is kind of fascinating. So Trump administration leaders were using Signal to plan bombings in foreign countries. And whoever was administrating that group chat, I'm assuming that's how it works, included Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic, who is just now privy to watching generals talk about who they're bombing internationally. Which I don't think I need to explain what a national security risk that is. Not just a national security risk, like, imagine if things were said in that call that disrupted global alliances. We don't know. It's insane. It's insane.
And it's insane on multiple levels. One of the big things to understand is that Signal is an encrypted, self-destructive sort of conversation system. So WhatsApp is not as secure. for example, iMessage not as secure. Any of these things that are sort of insecure in and of themselves are a problem to be doing Department of Defense shit on, you could say. Signal is at least secure, but it's secure in a way that is actually really terrifying.
You know what's terrifying, Brooks?
What's that?
Your continuing need to make me smaller than you on the screen.
All right. We'll fix that. We'll fix that. There you go. Is that better?
Yes.
No? Okay.
I can't see. I'm going to assume it's better.
I made you very tiny. The way that Signal operates is by being encrypted end to end. No one except those in the actual conversation, and technically, actually, no one except the literal devices that are opening the message that are part of the Signal group are actually offered any ability to read what's in there. This is actually really, really bad. So as much as it may sound, at least it's secure, the challenge is that you're not allowed to do this when you are part of, say, the War Cabinet, because all of these things are supposed to be recorded. This is part of transparency law that exists in the U.S. government.
Which is why, for example, it wouldn't be a good thing, say, if some public official...
Brooks, green heart emoji.
Why, thank you.
Very nice. Thank you, Wondova.
It would be terrible, for example, just by way of analogy, if a public official who is responsible, let's say like a Secretary of State or something, were to be, keeping important confidential documents on a personal email server on their laptop, say. This is a hypothetical.
Imagine entire wartime activities that have no record whatsoever for any semblance of investigation afterwards, which is actually something that you can see in how the Signal conversation happened, that this is why they're doing it and how they're treating it. They talk about their coordination, how it's doing. They make horrifying comments across the board about everything. And they don't actually talk about who's in the chat. Like, he's only able to sort of presume that MAR, M-A-R, is Marco Antonio Rubio. It may not be.
Okay, we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. Why don't we scroll down a little bit and let me actually read this article out, because it's actually really good. Down to where the story technically begins. Okay,
go for it. While you do that, I'm going to go get my daughter. I'll be right back. Sorry, she's running around.
The story technically begins shortly after the Hamas invasion of southern Israel in October 2023. The Houthis, an Iran-backed terrorist organization whose motto is "God is great, death to America, death to Israel, curse on the Jews, victory to Islam," soon launched attacks on Israel and on international shipping, creating havoc for global trade. Throughout 2024, the Biden administration was ineffective in countering these Houthi attacks. The incoming Trump administration promised a tougher response. This is where Pete Hegseth and I come in. On Tuesday, March 11th, I received a connection request on Signal from a user identified as Michael Waltz. Signal is an open-source encrypted messaging service popular with journalists and others who seek more privacy than other text messaging services are capable of delivering. I assumed that the Michael Waltz in question was President Donald Trump's national security advisor. I did not, however, assume that the request was from the actual Michael Waltz. I have met him in the past, and though I didn't find it particularly strange that he might be reaching out to me, I did think it's somewhat unusual, given the Trump administration's contentious relationship with journalists and Trump's periodic fixation on me specifically. It immediately crossed my mind that someone could be masquerading as Waltz in order to somehow entrap me. It is not at all uncommon these days for nefarious actors to try to induce journalists to share information that could be used against them. I accepted the connection request, hoping that this was the actual national security advisor, and that he wanted to chat about Ukraine, or Iran, or some other important matter. And I can't read anymore, because Brooks has left the screen, and he's in control of the scroll. Well done, Brooks. This is just, it's so incredibly... How are you doing? Can you scroll down just an inch for me, if you would?
I will.
Thank you.
Apologies. My wife's at the doctor's, so I've got the 3-year-old who just decided to go into the garage, and so that meant I had to get up immediately.
That's not good. Okay. I accepted the connection request, hoping that this was the actual national security advisor and that he wanted to chat about Ukraine or Iran or some other important matter. 2 days later, Thursday at 4:28 p.m., I received a notice that I was to be included in a Signal chat group. It was called the Houthi PC Small Group. A message to the group from Michael Waltz, quote unquote, read as follows. Team establishing a principles group for coordination on Houthis, particularly for over the next 72 hours. My deputy Alex Wong is pulling together a tiger team at deputies/agency chief of staff level, following up from the meeting in the sit room this morning for action items, and will be sending that out later this evening. The message continued. Please provide the best staff POC from your team for us to coordinate with over the next couple of days and over the weekend. THX. The term Principals Committee generally refers to a group of the senior, most national security officials, including the Secretaries of Defense, State, and the Treasury, as well as the Director of the CIA. It should go without saying, but I'll say it anyway, that I have never been invited to a White House Principals Committee meeting, and that in my many years of reporting on national security matters, I had never heard of one being convened over a commercial messaging app. 1 minute later, a person identified only as MAR, M-A-R, the Secretary of State as Marco Antonio Rubio, wrote, Mike Needham for State, apparently designating the current counselor of the State Department as his representative. At the same moment, a Signal user identified as J.D. Vance wrote Andy Baker for VP. 1 minute after that, TG, presumably Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, or someone masquerading as her, wrote Joe Kent for DNI. 9 minutes later, Scott B., apparently Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, or someone spoofing his identity, wrote Dan Katz for Treasury. At 4:53 p.m., a user called Pete Hegseth wrote Dan Caldwell for DOD. And at 6:54 p.m., Brian wrote Brian McCormack for NSC. One more person responded, John Ratcliffe, wrote at 5:24 p.m. with the name of a CIA official to be included in the group. I am not publishing that name because that person is an active intelligence officer.
Jesus Christ.
Just as an aside here, like, here's the thing. What's terrifying here is not specifically the use of the app. That's terrifying for different reasons. What's terrifying is that whoever is managing this, where did they get the list of people to include? Why are there email addresses, phone numbers, etc.? Why is there contact information in this list for people who do not have whatever extreme levels of security clearance is required to be involved in this call?
Or for people who already have a secure and safe way of communicating all this information.
Yeah.
Because that's got to be the assumption here, right?
Well, that's something else too. It's like, why would you be doing this? You have not been doing this for a very long time. This is obviously an innovation. What's the point? And the purpose would be to keep decisions you're making secret from other parts of your administration.
Well, and it's clear to me the way that, like he says, that they're adding, feel free to add people, that they already have a ton of Signal groups.
You know what this screams to me? And this is something that a lot of people are still coming to grips with. When Trump first came into office, he was largely working with a government packed full of Democrats and Republicans, like actual Republicans, people who are party people. This time round, his inner circle is comprised of people like J.D. Vance, people who, guess how they're coordinating with people? Using Discord. Well, they're in a bunch of like weird NRX Discord groups. They're having email conversations with people, but like weird people, like Curtis Yarvin types, and they're doing that whole thing, and they're taking this mentality to national security. And it's terrifying.
Well, and just to read, because this paragraph, we're gonna go through the whole article because this is incredible. But I love this paragraph. After receiving the Waltz text related to the Houthi PC small group, I consulted a number of colleagues. We discussed the possibility that these texts were part of a disinformation campaign initiated by a foreign intelligence service, or more likely a media gadfly organization, the sort of group that attempts to place journalists in embarrassing positions and sometimes succeeds. Again, a right-wing thing. You know who he's talking about. I had very strong doubts that this text group was real because I could not believe that the national security leadership of the United States would communicate on Signal about imminent war plans. I also could not believe the national security advisor to the president would be so reckless to include the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic in such discussions with senior U.S. officials up to and including the vice president. Again, when we live in a space of disinfo, we live in a space where this is just the sort of operant way that especially the right-wing media operates. because he's talking about the various, and there's a whole bunch of different groups on the right who've been doing this for the last decade, who create situations like Acorn for Obama or other things for media organizations that they can then use to discredit them. The fact that he had this, and it fairly, like he couldn't believe it because it's so silly, but he had to wait until after bombings proved it was real. And that's that's the crazy shit for me, that we have media that feels so disempowered. An editor of The Atlantic put in a position where he's advance told about effectively war crimes, as they're going to be talking about it here, and he can't do anything about it, is to me, again, emblematic of the world that we're now in.
Well, it's also kind of fascinating, too, how just the proliferation of these things and the easy ability to fabricate them, the sort of leveling effect that this technology has had, makes it so that there's such a constant sea of confusion that you have to assume that everything could be a knot by some other person, because it literally could be. With the right email address, I could fake this. Like, this is a thing anybody could do.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying, because the current administration swims in that kind of confusion. It relies on it. Even in his first time in office, Trump got away with saying a lot of contradictory things that would have pilloried any other presidential candidate. Why? Well, because he's just,
the cloud.
The doddering. I think he's the doddering old man who says crazy things at the dinner table, but his heart's in the right place, quote unquote. And instead of being taken as evidence of he's lying, it's being taken as evidence of, oh, he's just like a normal person. He's not embedded in the machine. He's not corrupted by that. He's like a representative of the everyman or whatever in his giant mansion in Mar-a-Lago. But like that constant stream then of contradictory statements means that people are free to pick the ones they like, ignore the ones they don't like. And the people who are making those statements are able to just get away with literally saying anything, no matter how horrendous or contradictory or incoherent or untrue.
Well, and again,
that's been democratized now, because now everybody's like that.
The next level of it is, just imagine if a reporter's being added to it. So at what point can other people then add these fuckers to another group chat? Like, you and I could fake a group chat and invite Tulsi, and she's not confirming outside of this via secure channel, because that would be in records. Like, that's the thing. All of that stuff stays in records. It's part of anything that could be a FOIA request. And if you have someone in a FOIA request saying, hey, take it to the secret place where the government doesn't record our like they're not going to do that. So there's no confirmation. Like, there's a reason Goldberg was in it, and not just in it for a small time, but in it for a long period. Someone added him, and this requires us to consider who else is being added flippantly, because if it's not government people, it's foreign agents, it's foreign leaders, it's press from other places, it's people they're friendly with. And
that's the thing, though, because it's like, so this it's really bad, right? Because this guy from The Atlantic was invited to a thing unsolicited. We only know about this one because this guy actually went public with it, because there was a bombing for him to confirm that this was real. Now, here's my question. How many times this happened previously? And how much information how much incredibly sensitive intelligence has therefore been disseminated widely to other journalists, other parties who aren't journalists? We just don't know. Prior to this, that they can now go back and say, oh, this was legitimate. We now have an insight into the secret plans of the United States military. This is really bad, because it goes so far beyond this particular event. Like, this is bad.
Yep.
And people are highlighting, wow, this government is so incompetent. Wow, their security is so shoddy. This is where my brain's at. Wow, it has been like this.
Yeah, this is the modus operandi. Like, there's no other way to consider it. This is the way that they've been functioning. And with that, we have to presume that they're having basically large chats around everything that the Trump org is doing with large numbers of people. Like, if they're doing it with Houthi bombings, they're doing it with, for example, deportations. They're doing it, like, you want to bet that there's a group chat somewhere where they're talking about, get that plane in the air right now, the judge is deciding.
Yeah.
Like, this is the kind of shit, this is the world we're in now. And it's it's not only kind of illegal, it's extremely illegal. But again, no one cares. But it's like, it hurts my brain to sort of have this conversation.
I think people care. I think people care quite a bit. I think here's the problem, though, and this is there's an additional danger to this, which is now other people can come forward with similar reports, and they could be lying, and we won't be able to tell. And so now it gets very scary, because now other countries might be making decisions vis-a-vis the United States, which is already at a record low level of trust internationally with everybody. Oh, they said this. Really? Well, they say they didn't say this, but this happened before. Okay.
Well, 100%. And when we start talking about it, I want to bring up one other article here, because one of the things that we've been talking about kind of a lot about these things is when Trump does a thing and how he sort of functions, the way it works is he tests something and then he does it next time, right? And then in 2019, the Department of Defense Office of Inspector General found, like, the DDS director, Brett Goldstein, began using Signal and bypassing FOIA request laws and other laws. And the Pentagon actually literally came out and said it's against policy. This is not a thing we do, and we can't do this. But no one did anything about it. Like, he ended up ending his 2 years and he moved on. And lo and behold, here we are now, and they're just doing it with every fucking thing. Because fascists are give a mouse a cookie. That's the nature of the beast across the board for us. And we need to be very aware of it, because every time they try something and they succeed and no one pushes back, and there's no, actual criminal charges, there's no actual effort from Congress to do a thing, no judge actually does a thing, it's just going to get worse. The way that, and this was, again, this article is from June 22nd, 2021. I know, sweetheart.
They got him.
Yeah, because Signal prevents third parties from accessing messages or calls, using the app to discuss official DoD information doesn't comply with FOIA requirements of DoD retention policies, according to the report. 11 of Goldstein's subordinates used Signal, 5 of whom told OIG there was a perception that the app was used to discuss classified or sensitive information. Like, once we're talking about him doing this, and he did it last time, we've got to presume that it is systemic now.
I want to keep reading the Atlantic article, because it gets crazy.
It does.
You'll see exactly what we're talking about as we go through. Like, this has, like, really serious implications for the international order, frankly. So the next day, things got even stranger. At 8:05 a.m. on Friday, March 14th, Michael Waltz texted the group, "Team, you should have a statement of conclusions with taskings per the president's guidance this morning in your high side inboxes." High side in government parlance refers to classified computer and communications systems. State and DoD, we developed suggested notification lists for regional allies and partners. Joint Staff is sending this AM a more specific sequence of events in the coming days, and we will work with DoD to ensure COS, OVP, and POTUS are briefed. At this point, a fascinating policy discussion commenced. The account labeled JD Vance responded at 8:16. "Team, I am out for the day doing an economic event in Michigan, but I think we are making a mistake." Vance was indeed in Michigan that day. The Vance account goes on to state, 3% of U.S. trade runs through the Suez. 40% of European trade does. There's a real risk that the public doesn't understand this or why it's necessary. The strongest reason to do this, as POTUS said, to send a message. The Vance account then goes on to make a noteworthy statement, considering that the vice president has not deviated publicly from Trump's position on virtually any issue. "I am not sure the president is aware how inconsistent this is with his message on Europe right now. There's a further risk that we see a moderate to severe spike in oil prices. I am willing to support the consensus of the team and keep these concerns to myself, but there is a strong argument for delaying this a month, doing the messaging work on why this matters, seeing where the economy is, etc." These people are so fucking evil, it's actually unreal. A person identified in Signal as Joe Kent, Trump's nominee to run the National Counterterrorism Center, is named Joe Kent, wrote at 8:22. There is nothing time-sensitive driving the timeline. We'll have the exact same options in a month. Then, at 8:26 a.m., a message landed in my Signal app.
I do have to mention just real quick, Joe Kent is the guy who is gonna be my fucking congressman. Like he's a fucking lunatic InfoWars psychotic. Like he's one of just to mention, like, because this is like when we're talking about like once you start getting away from the really public names, which are already awful enough, and you start talking about like these second tier or third tier nominations, they are the most hardline right wing lunatics that there are. He's a piece of shit. He's a piece of shit.
JD might not be as dumb as he thinks. JD Vance is. People think JD Vance is dumb. JD Vance is not dumb. JD Vance is a world-class snake.
And a cuck.
And a cuck, as most snakes are. But continuing. Then at 8:26 a.m., a message landed in my Signal from the user John Ratcliffe. The message contained information that might be interpreted as related to actual and current intelligence operations. Now, again, I have to ask. This is the one we know about.
Yep.
How many? Like, here's a question, and I'm sure people in the CIA are very interested in this. How many people do you think? How many agents of the United States government have died or been imprisoned or had their work just completely undermined by these clowns just projecting secret information on these apps to God knows who? Because like here's the thing, if they put this journalist into this group, they sent an invite, that means that whoever is doing the invites, they aren't going through a list and verifying. Nope. They've just got a list and they're just hitting push.
And again, the way that this works, this conversation in some way would be recorded somewhere for investigation at some point. So like, because Pip is asking, and I think it's worth taking a second, why is JD Vance like not gung-ho about bombing brown people like he usually is? You know, he's a piece of shit. That's because this stuff that the Houthis are doing hurts Europe more than us. And by helping Europe, he sees that as a negative for the messaging from Trump. So, like, that's, again, because he's a piece of shit, I think is the answer. Is that fair, Sunday?
It is, but I'd like to finish the article. At 8:27, a message arrived from the Pete Hegseth account. VP, I understand your concerns and fully support you raising with POTUS. Important considerations, most of which are tough to know how they play out. Economy, Ukraine, peace, Gaza, etc. I think messaging is going to be tough no matter what. Nobody knows who the Houthis are, which is an astonishing statement. I think messaging is going to be tough no matter what. Nobody knows who the Houthis are, which is why we would need to stay focused on 1, Biden failed, and 2, Iran funded.
Yep. And that's, by the way, that's been the Republican playbook for this. Flatly. And they're not wrong. I don't think the average American has a clue about the Houthis as a people or what they've gone through or what is happening in Yemen. It is one of those terms you can say it's God's blind spot.
The people who would be reacting to this in the news are the people for whom this is going to be tough messaging are, right? We're not talking about hardline Trump supporters. We're talking about the majority of the rest of the country that is not super happy with this, including, by the way, a whole lot of Trump critical people who are not paying attention to other media. The Hegseth message goes on to state, waiting a few weeks or a month does not fundamentally change the calculus. 2 immediate risks on waiting. 1, this leaks and we look indecisive. There's another variant of this that he didn't take into account clearly. 2, Israel takes an action first, or Gaza ceasefire falls apart and we don't get to start this on our terms. We can manage both. We are prepared to execute, and if I had final go or no-go vote, I believe we should. This is not about the Houthis. I see it as 2 things. 1, restoring freedom of navigation, a core national interest, and 2, reestablish deterrence, which Biden cratered. But we can easily pause, and if we do, we can easily pause. That's a crazy statement. And if we do, I will do all we can to enforce 100% OPSEC, Operation Security. I welcome other thoughts. What a sentence to include in this. I will do all we can to enforce 100% OPSEC, and that's in the leak. That's just beautiful.
It's amazing. It's, again, the utter incompetence across the board of these fucking people. On top of, like, again, they're doing a bunch of illegal shit, and they're bad at it. Like, it's miraculous.
Well, which begs the question: is like, why are they doing a bunch of illegal shit? Because here's the thing, right? You don't have to do that. The executive branch is able to make dangerous decisions like this by the book because it's charged with it's allowed to do that. That's the rule. You can be jailed for life for breaking security like that, like this, as a matter of fact. This is just insane. Like this is the kind of thing that a Julian Assange would risk life imprisonment for. And it's just hey Atlantic, just take it. Just take it. Just take it all. Yeah, we don't think our president understands international relations or the actual like effect of our decisions that he's pushing.
It's fucking nuts.
We don't.
Keep reading. I will return again in a moment. But this gets so awful. This gets so awful.
A few minutes later, the Michael Waltz account posted a lengthy note about trade figures and the limited capabilities of European navies. Quote, whether it's now or several weeks from now, it will have to be the United States that reopens these shipping lanes. Per the President's request, we are working with DoD and State to determine how to compile the cost associated and levy them on the Europeans. Unquote. The account identified as J.D. Vance addressed the message at 8:45 to Pete Hegseth. If you think we should do it, let's go. I just hate bailing Europe out again. The administration has argued that America's European allies benefit economically from the U.S. Navy's protection of international shipping lanes. Imagine basing your foreign policy. We can hear you. Imagine basing your foreign policy off of resenting another country. Just personally. Not even based on something real. Just resenting another country. Resenting a continent, actually, as it happens. Just resenting a continent. Just, we are making decisions affecting millions of people's lives, possibly destabilizing our relationships with all of our global allies. Putting us on high suspicion, which you will see, by the way, with people who are our allies and are not our allies, or who are our allies for other reasons. Just because we hate Europe. We hate that SJW continent. That's where critical theory comes from. Like, just imagine. Just imagine. It's like, wow. Resenting a political bloc, yeah. 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 I can't scroll down. So we will wait. I guess we can keep going there for that last paragraph. The user identified as Hegseth responded 3 minutes later. VP, I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. Brooks, we can still hear you. I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic, but Mike is correct. We're the only ones on the planet, on our side of the ledger, who can do this. Nobody else even close. Question is timing. I feel like now is as good a time as any. Given POTUS directive to reopen shipping lanes, I think we should go, but POTUS still retains 24 hours of decision space. European freeloading. If you are benefiting from a relationship, why would you care if another party is benefiting more? You might resent it a little bit if you're being exploited at your expense. But if you're not, if, for example, this quote-unquote freeloading is actually a deliberate extension of American power that you're too stupid to understand. Because here's the thing, and this is what a lot of analysts have been ringing the alarm bells about. It is to the United States' benefit to benefit other countries. It is to the United States' benefit. Sundance, what's happening?
I have no idea.
I don't know either. Oh, you're back. Okay, good.
It
is to America's.
It's that fun age. It's a thing people may not know if you don't have kids. There's that age where they become deeply precocious and don't give a shit about anything you say. So it's just one of those fun times.
And just because you said that, your kid's not going to be saying shit in kindergarten. Well done.
Oh, we were at that's not the worst thing they say. We were at the fish store and we were buying a couple fish because I build and I have a big paludarium I take care of, and Dexter's walking around and he met some family and they were like, "Oh, what kind of fish are you getting?" He's like, "Oh, we're buying guppies, so that way the Dr. Fish we have don't take over the entire fucking aquarium." Like, yeah, that's my kid. That's just my kid. I know, it's terrible.
Speaking of guppies taking over the entire aquarium, I can't get over this. I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. These people don't understand that.
They don't understand how the globe works or how international hegemony functions. It's incredible.
Well, that's the thing. Like, international hegemony. That is a carefully cultivated, expensive, centuries-long development that, once lost, will not be attained without tremendous suffering by the United States. And it's like, that freeloading is dependency. That's power. That's power without having to literally hold a gun to people's heads, which is greater power than having to hold a gun to people's heads.
Or
that's a situation of insecurity.
Cooperation. Because with that,
those are synonyms.
Right, but they have different intentions behind them. Because it could be a very positive thing where it's like, hey, we work with our allies because you are high trading partners with us, because we want to work with you in these defensive
I'm going to
things.
stop you there, actually. I'm going to stop you right there. We have to throw intentions out the window now, because we're in a situation in which the current administration has no reason we can have no expectation that they will honor the intentions or the decisions of the previous administration.
No, certainly. But I think that's my point.
But hang on. So we actually do need to reduce this now into naked self-interest. And here's the problem. When you remove those benefits that your country is giving to others that they have grown dependent upon, that self-interest, that connection that keeps them tethered to you, is gone. And so they'll go somewhere else.
I think it's worth talking about because the system of hegemony that Trump has basically taken a hammer to over the course of his entire presidency, well, I'm not necessarily a big fan of it. The reality of how it came to be and what it is and how we now integrate it, I think we can talk about intention from a distinctly American perspective. And I know being Canadian, I think you can see it, but it's maybe tougher. We as a country, and it's, again, the phrasing Pete Hegseth has here, he doesn't have to have a show. These people, he doesn't know, he clearly doesn't know there's a reporter here. These are people who are within the space of almost the cone of silence. And he is still, in all caps, writing, "It's pathetic." Like he's still putting that emphasis. So the space of where he's invested is in that very American thing of you're on your own. The only honest day's work is a day's work you do alone. Anyone who helps you ever is completely a piece of shit. Anyone who gets help sucks. It's a very American mentality that is something that is instilled in anyone my age, certainly by their parents, and anyone their age by their parents. And it's a thing that's been growing over time. Europe doesn't have the same mentality. Canada and even Mexico, we're very unique in the way that we believe we are able to become the best in the world, every individual person, by being alone. And that atomization in the extreme way is what I think we're seeing. And it's what that nihilistic sort of, the world is on its own, we're on our own, they shouldn't be freeloading off of us. I actually think that there's a different type of hegemony they're wanting to aim for that is distinctly corporatist fascist. Because this is the other thing I recognize in this is Mussolini's writings.
Well, we also know this because J.D. Vance is in this call, and J.D. Vance is a big admirer of Moldbug, who's very explicit. This is what we want. This is the guy who's bankrolled by Peter Thiel. These guys are all buddy-buddy with each other. We know this. That's exactly what they want.
Yeah, it's really, really tough.
Let's think for a second about the idea that is often floated that the American experiment in democracy has failed. Okay, I resent the notion of an American experiment in democracy by itself, but let's take that as given. The American experiment in democracy has failed. You'll see that phrase a lot in neo-reactionary, sort of like Moldbugian, Peter Thielian, whatever sectors.
Mm-hmm.
And here's my question: Why wasn't the transatlantic slave trade enough for you? Why wasn't like the enslavement of an entire race of people, quote unquote, an entire ethnicity?
I mean, I can explain to
working
you.
them to death. Why was that?
These
not
are
the thing?
as awful as this sounds. And again,
I know you can explain it to me. I'm asking rhetorically. But go on.
It's because those things prove the American experiment.
Okay, now you're gonna have to elaborate.
Yeah. Slavery existing is not the point. We stopped it. Like, that's the mental space that the right in America goes to, is not that slavery itself is something that was indicative of how the American experiment operates or works.
I don't think that's the logic. I don't think that's the logic, and I'll tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
If you stop slavery by dint of a civil war, and you stop it, by the way, after the Europeans did, then we, quote unquote, did not stop it. Some of them stopped it, and then a new political order was established afterwards.
I understand.
Stop it. It just
Again, you're arguing
Yes.
with me. I'm not telling you my position. I'm telling you this is 100% how George Bush talked about this actively as president. That the stopping of that women's suffrage proved the American experiment operated, rather than saying.
I mean, vanilla Republicans will absolutely. I wouldn't characterize J.D. Vance as that, for example. I wouldn't characterize these people as being continuous with that logic. I think these people are coming from something.
I put them in very much the same thing. It's all continuation of that and becoming more refined. The post-truth world that we exist in now was begun by
maybe
George
Bush. It reduces. Yeah, maybe it reduces to that. I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
I think they're specifically rebelling against that on several grounds. And I think that particular I think the spirit of it is identical once you boil it down, but I don't think how they get there is the same. I think how they get there is a little bit different. The abolition of slavery proves that America is good. The abolition of slavery, I think Brooks is saying, proves that the American experiment in democracy is a success. However,
Correct.
I think the entire point to democracy is precisely that you don't need a civil war in order to enact major change like
yes.
that. So.
Again, I'm not talking about it from the position of someone who has any grasp of the actual functioning of government or statehood or how these things and laws interact and how people exist. We're like, when we talk about this, we're talking about people who genuinely believe in the great man theory, like, and believe that they have a great man ordained by God. Like, they have some semblance of that. A lot of them do. And again, this is again why I say this comes from the same Bush.
Well, and democracy and sort of like a democratic spirit in politics is generally seen as like the most fertile ground for allowing great men to rise to their rightful positions. That's the whole. I don't know if you've ever seen that awful movie, The Pursuit of Happiness.
I do not care for it, but I have seen it, yes.
It's terrible. But like essentially what it is the story of a guy who's just living in squalor for the 5% chance that he will get a job that will take him out of squalor. And to that end, he's making his child sleep in subway stations, etc., etc. And then the ending of the story is he's so happy, he's jumping for joy because he got a job. And that's it. And it ignores, of course, all the other people who did the exact same things, maybe even better, and just didn't get lucky. Because it was all worth it, because that one great man came to existence. Now, of course, the story always ends there. It's like in Harry Potter. It ends with, and they finished school, and all was right with the world, the end. Because we don't see him dying of alcoholism afterwards. We don't see his child resenting him growing up because he lived in squalor, and all of his gains are just lost in the next generation because he destroyed his family and his body and his soul for the sake of that chance at riches, which is taken to be equivalent to flourishing and wealth and prosperity.
Yeah, but like in chat, Lisa posts, and it's again a thing. The U.S. is the longest running democracy. Now, that is a fact, that is taught to a lot of Americans. Now, again, what does it mean to be a democracy? Is that a meaningful thing? Well, it has to do with our Constitution has been in place the longest. But what the fuck does that even mean and how is it working? So when we talk about, and when the right talks, and when I was taught in school about how the Civil War and all of that proves the American project, literally, that the Civil Rights Movement proves the American project, that the stopping of the Vietnam War proves the American project. It's because there is a liberal investment and adulation of the idea of America that's able to continually be found again and again and again, even if it is a distinctly different functioning position in every single way. And the idea of democracy completely obliterated over and over and over in and of itself. So it's a difficult position to be, but again, this is in these texts, the language that they're using, the way they're talking about this, it is very much in this weird
It's comical. Yeah.
It's because, again, we're seeing them show that they are in some way, either all of them are faking the same true beliefs or that they are all true believers in some capacity.
Actually, it's better than that.
Okay.
It's that it's both. So J.D. Vance is basically declaring, which we already knew because we saw him pivot on Trump when he was offered a position under Trump. Because he used to characterize Trump as a tyrant. He used to rail against Trump until all of a sudden Trump offered him a job. And what we're seeing here is these people are exactly as sneaky as we thought, but that pathetic part of them that has like the political comprehension of like an edgy high school student who's just discovered like a Mencius Moldbug blog or watched Sargon or whatever.
No, it's
that is who they are. That is who they are. That's not an act for their constituencies. That's not an act for their audiences. It's not an act for the kinds of people who get hard watching that kind of thing. Though that's them. That is actually them.
And when you talk about how they're talking about it, and again, it may be just the fact that they feel they're safe from ever having anyone see this. But if you go back and you look through, like, and I have George Bush and Obama and some of Trump one and even a lot of Biden, and you can do this for Clinton, Reagan, because we keep track of all this. You can find FOIA requests where you actually see how communication was done, what they said, and how they went back and forth. And I will tell you the professionalism, and I'm not married to the idea of professionalism, but the professionalism and the way they went about it and how they spoke of these things more somberly, how they spoke of these things more seriously and more directly versus this high school level back and forth chat that seems to be like just as much about choosing a prom king as it is whether or not to bomb and kill innocent people. I think that stood out to me as I was reading this just stunningly. It was like, what the fuck is going on? Like they have the rest of the Hegseth's line. Mike is correct. We are the only ones on the planet on our side of the ledger who can do this. Nobody else even close. Question is timing. I feel like now is as good a time as any, given POTUS directive to reopen shipping lanes. I think we should go, but POTUS still retains 24 hours of decision space. And it's like, it's so casual in comparison to everything I've ever read from all of these communications, even ones that are like, again, lifetime military people, they have that trained into them, but they are casual-ish in a lot of these convos because they're bored about it. And it's, I just am stunned about all of the way they're doing this.
Now, what's crazy is that it gets wilder somehow.
Well, that's when we get to that next one.
At this point, the previously silent SM joined the conversation. As I heard it, the president was clear, green light, but we soon make clear to Egypt and Europe what we expect in return. We also need to figure out how to enforce such a requirement, e.g., if Europe doesn't remunerate, then what? If the U.S. successfully restores freedom of navigation at great cost, there needs to be some further economic gain extracted in return.
To which
by the way, is a comical misunderstanding of how global economics works. Them flourishing and increasing trade with you is the return. You are not, I mean, you are an island, but you are not an island in that way.
This is gangsta shit. Like that's...
Well, it's gangster shit, but it's like, it's gangster shit that hasn't caught up to fucking Adam Smith. Like, even gangsters understand the importance of flows. They understand the importance of being able to have the specific rights to work in a territory for their own personal benefit. But they also understand that if you cut off This is why gangs interact with each other. If you just cut off and isolate yourselves economically and only take what you threaten for, and then communication stops, you suffer. Those flows don't pass through you. You don't get to take your cut anymore. And that's what's baffling about this. Europe being able to resume trade. Who are they trading with? Like these they trade with you. They trade with the people around them who also trade with you. That's you benefit from these flows continuing. There is literally nothing gained by this being blocked for the United States. In fact, they suffer too. It's actually unreal. They actually don't understand what their country runs on.
And there's also a pacing to this that he mentions in the article lightly, but the pacing to this, because we're about to reveal who SM it probably is, but yes. The pacing to this, as you look through the messages, is like they're happening in succession. Like people are having a live conversation back and forth. And Hegseth makes his comment about how the POTUS retains it. We should maybe wait. I don't know. We should maybe do it at 8:49. And then almost an hour later, SM comes in and basically upends that, saying you're just doing it. Like President was clear. And again, this is to say that this other person is overruling the vice president, overruling Hegseth, overruling everyone, saying he said this, do this thing. And who is SM?
But also, it speaks to the fact that this united front that they're all presenting, these people, I think this administration is going to collapse in on itself, and here's why.
Oh, they're all hyper-political psychotics.
Well, what we're seeing is them communicating recklessly. What we are also seeing is them not communicating.
I agree with this.
J.D. Vance is providing advice, but being deferential to people. Why? He's the vice president. Well, he's being deferential because he's not really the vice president. Money. These other people are providing.
Needs to be prefaced with hashtag not the onion.
Thank you very much.
Fair. Yeah, this is not the onion. Thank you, Insomnior, for the super chat. This is not the onion. This is high school girls.
It's not a super chat.
Wild.
Very quickly, guys, we are not monetized yet. If you want to help support the channel and get your text read out by TTS, there is a link pinned in the chat. You can donate there, and it will immediately appear on screen and be read out by an AI who will soon replace all of us. Sorry, as you were, Brooks.
But it's the girl, like high school girl conversation that's happening, as you're saying, with J.D. Vance being deferential to Pete Hegseth, but he's very much, I think, sharing an interesting concern that Hegseth agrees with. And that concern that they're going back and forth with is, do we want to protect Europe without getting money? Which is fucking nuts. And then to be overruled by someone who's not officially in the administration, not in a meaningful way.
Well, as I was going to say, it's like, we know from the background that you have people like Elon Musk who are not even part of the administration. This is just fundamentally at bottom. This is just a guy.
Yep.
Okay. You've got this guy walking around bullying elected members of the government, like bullying them.
Yep.
Telling them, hey, how many people have you fired? He's your superior. He's like what? And Trump is mediating between these people like a flaky teacher who's trying to convince a bullied student's mother to just let it happen. And what we're seeing here is that this inner circle of people who are supposedly making decisions about who to bomb and the consequences are just being ignored, and they are antagonistic to Trump, who just doesn't bother to engage.
And
there
doesn't
is no
give a
back
shit
and forth
at all.
There's no consideration of merit. It's just, nope, we're doing it. And it's just like, but why? One of the premises that everybody has agreed upon is that you have the same options in a month. Why not take your time, set the stage? And the reason why is because they are not in communication with the president. He is not talking to them. He doesn't care. Which begs the question, where is the adjacent conversation happening between the people who do care? it's really like, and
There
again,
isn't
like
one.
this
I would
chat
I
is
would
taking-
argue there
yeah.
is not one because again, there's no reason that anyone who's outside of this we should assume is involved in these decisions or conversations at all, except for Trump. And I'm not even sure he's fully involved, to be very frank. Like again, these chats are what they are, and I do not have a reason to believe that there's more than this. And it's
I disagree. I think we have a reason to believe there are a lot like this. And
oh
here's
no,
the
I'm talking
thing.
about people who care. Sorry.
Well, what do you mean by
They're-
people who care? You mean like psychologically? Do they personally, in their heart of hearts, actually care? I mean, obviously,
Well,
none
I
of
was
these people-
referring to the group you were just talking about.
No, I'm talking about the people who are urging Trump to make the opposite decision of what these people are saying. Because
I
we're
don't
not
think
we're not
there
even
is
talking.
anyone.
I think there's someone.
We can hope, but it's. I think
No, I don't. I don't hope. I'm actually. I'm kind of the opposite because these people. Like, here's the thing: these people are comical, but
Yes,
they're
I agree.
advising. They're advising a more cautious approach. A more cautious approach than what the Trump administration ultimately took, which was to just go ahead and bomb on the 14th. So if he's, for example, taking cues from Elon Musk, who's saying just go ahead, just as an example, that's not good, right? Because it means that Trump does actually have clearer heads.
I think you and I may be reading these differently then. So for me, what I'm seeing is that they're both trying to divine. I mean, they're doing the despotic overcoding thing, trying to define what Trump wants more than anything. They're not actually doing it in a position of like, I think this may be a good idea, but instead this might be more true to Trump's vision.
No, I disagree, and I'll show you
when
why.
When Miller comes in, he says, the president was clear. We have a green light to do this, but we soon make clear to Egypt and Europe what we inspect in return.
Yeah, but you've forgotten what JD Vance said when it started. So earlier on, JD Vance comes in, and he said, "Hang on, let me find it quickly." So when JD Vance comes in,
I think we're making a mistake. 3% of U.S. trade runs through Suez, 40% off European trade. There's real risk. The public doesn't understand this or why it's necessary. Strongest reason to do this, as POTUS said.
Okay, this line here. Hang on. This line here. There is a real risk. The public doesn't understand why or what it's necessary. The strongest reason to do this, POTUS said in the message. Here we go. I am not, in the second paragraph here, where it says the Vance account. Quote, I am not sure the president is aware how inconsistent this is with his message on Europe right now. This is a statement saying that he does not have faith that the president understands. There is a breakdown of communication being represented here. That's a super important line to me. That's a super important line. So what I'm seeing here is they're all crazy, and they're all pathetic, and they're all as childish as we were discussing, but there are steps. There's the people who are making the actual decisions. There's the people who should be helping make the actual decisions down here, and they're a little bit smarter. And then there's somebody else back here who's making this part ignore this part. And I'm curious as to what that is. Because absolutely Trump is getting advice from people. Absolutely he's talking to people about this. He's making decisions, probably weighing what they're saying, but he's not communicating that weighing. That's not here. He's not present in this conversation, obviously. So like what I'm seeing here is these people are discussing as if they cannot count on the president to hear what they're saying. When he says, I'm not sure the president is aware, in the third person, I am not sure the president is aware how inconsistent this is with his message on Europe right now. That is a statement that the president is not competent to actually gauge the consequences of his decisions. That's not saying, I disagree with the president that this will negatively impact his messaging on Europe or whether it won't. That's saying, I don't know if he'd be able to tell. I don't think he's there. That's my read on it.
I think it works. The biggest challenge for me across the board for all of this.
Sunday name names, don't give us this group or that group. It's a hypothetical. I don't know the group. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, this is where we start getting into the way I read this, and even the thing with JD Vance is he's trying to do what Trump's bigger intention is. Oh, I don't think Trump understands that this may be counter to his message that he truly wants. And the correction that Stephen Miller offers is that Trump was clear, this is with his message. We do this to save Europe. And then we say to them afterwards, Rick's I thank you very much for the very nice, thank you. Um, we do this and then we extort money. Like, that's basically what Stephen Miller's saying. And immediately Pete Hegseth agrees. And so this is, to me, I find this part fascinating. And I think there's a lot of nightmares to be had here, to be perfectly frank. But yeah.
Let's press on, because we aren't actually done yet.
No, we're not.
That message from SM, presumably President Trump's confidant, Stephen Miller, the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, or someone playing Stephen Miller, effectively shut down the conversation. The last text of the day came from Pete Hegseth, who wrote at 9:46 a.m., agree. After reading this chain, I recognized that this conversation possessed a high degree of verisimilitude. It's a big word. The texts, in their word choice and arguments, sounded as if they were written by the people who purportedly sent them, or by a particularly adept AI text generator. I was still concerned that this could be a disinformation operation or a simulation of some sort, and I remained mystified that no one in the group seemed to have noticed my presence. But if it was a hoax, the quality of mimicry and the level of foreign policy insight were impressive. It was the next morning, Saturday, March 15th, when the story became truly bizarre. At 11:44 a.m., the account labeled Pete Hegseth posted in Signal, "Team update." I will not quote from this update, or from certain other subsequent texts. The information contained in them, if they had been read by an adversary of the United States, could conceivably have been used to harm American military and intelligence personnel, particularly in the broader Middle East, Central Command's area of responsibility. What I will say, in order to illustrate the shocking recklessness of this Signal conversation, is that the Hegseth post contained operational details of forthcoming strikes on Yemen, including information about targets, weapons the U.S. would be deploying, and attack sequencing. The only person to reply to the update from Hegseth was the person identified as the vice president. I will say a prayer for victory, Vance wrote. 2 other users subsequently added prayer emojis. That's just, I can see Wes Anderson writing this in my head, and it's just beautiful. According to the lengthy Hegseth text, the first detonations in Yemen would be felt 2 hours hence at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time. So I waited in my car in a supermarket parking lot. If this Signal chat was real, I reasoned, Houthi targets would soon be bombed. At 1:55, I checked X and searched Yemen. Explosions were then being heard across Sana'a, the capital city. I went back to the Signal channel at 1:48. Michael Waltz, quote-unquote, had provided the group an update again. Again, I won't quote from this text, except to note that he described the operation as an amazing job. A few minutes later, John Ratcliffe wrote, "A good start." Not long after, Waltz responded with 3 emoji, a fist, an American flag, and fire.
I'm just going to, while you read, I'm going to scoot past the text and just show the actual screenshot.
Yeah, please do that. Not long after, Waltz responded with 3 emoji, a fist, American flag. I just read that. Others soon joined in, including Mar, who wrote, "Good job, Pete, and your team," and Susie Wiles, who texted, "Kudos to all, most particularly those in theater and CENTCOM. Really great, God bless." Steve Witkoff responded with 5 emoji, 2 hands praying, a flexed bicep, and 2 American flags. They should just be posting eggplants at this point. TG responded, "Great work and effects." The after-action discussion, indeed. Great work and effects, guys. The after-action discussion included assessments of damage done, including the likely death of a specific individual. The Houthi-run Yemen Health Ministry reported that at least 53 people were killed in the strikes, a number that has not been independently verified. On Sunday, Waltz appeared on ABC's This Week.
Just a fucking, it's worth a second for a gigantic goddamn sigh. Like, a lot of civilians were killed in these strikes. Like, it's the thing to just notice. Just to go back to the article on the airstrikes that they're talking about, because it's worth inserting, because this is the reality of the thing. This is the building. Here are the people. This is what was bombed. The Houthis described American airstrikes targeting sites around the city. Houthi stronghold, because there's a lot. It's Yemen. Almost everything's a Houthi stronghold. The Red Sea port of Hodeidah, Marib province, oil gas fields. Killed 53 people immediately after they began March 15th. Started after the Houthis threatened to begin targeting Israeli ships again over Israel blocking aid entering the Gaza Strip. The rebels in the past have a loose definition of what is an Israeli ship, and that's what they threatened. They've been targeting vessels. This has been the excuse they've been using for forever for this. But like the actual bombing has killed a huge number of people. And you can see in the background, there's not a lot of buildings that have been spared. This is Gaza-esque what we're doing. So
the tenor of this conversation and the reaction to this.
Fist bump American flag fire.
I know. The fact that they would do that, it screams that these are people, and here's what I think, where I think the eagerness to actually do this comes from. Because, again, if you're trying to, look, if you're trying to squeeze someone, okay? It's like the Joker said in The Dark Knight, right? In The Dark Knight. If you're good at something, don't do it for free. If you're trying to squeeze someone, hey, I'll do this thing if you give me this in return. You don't eagerly go do it in advance. And for two reasons. First of all, because if it's something like this, for example, and not just like giving someone, you know, the first hit's free, and the second one you have to pay, and then more and more, you're now committed to the consequences of an action politically, as they are here. And why would you not take the time that you have to seed the ground, make it with two E's and an S, not seed, give away the ground. Why would you not take the time to prepare the ground so that this is as successful as possible when everybody advising you is saying we have time? We should take our time. We should do this carefully and right so that we benefit and we win. And the reason is that these are people who never thought they'd make it this far. These are people who are really, really aroused by the fact that they have these weapons at their disposal and they want to use them. They are really excited about having the buttons that these things push. They're like a kid who's like playing like a paradox strategy game for the first time, and they just realize after being very bored for several hours, so that's how you wage war. And then you crash your entire playthrough because you want to see what happens. And that's the attitude here. It's like there were very pointed reasons given, even by people who are generally very reckless, very callous, very, very crude, and with a very simplistic understanding of international relations and global economy, who were still like, at least we can recognize that there is a publicity hit that we could take by doing this quickly. Maybe we should do it slowly. No, green light, go ahead. We want to do it. We want to do it now. America. It's like these people are actual children.
They really
These people are actual children. No, you're missing something. Trump is a sales guy. He's creating the problem and demanding payment. No, there already is a problem, though. That's the whole. That the Houthis are the problem. That's already.
That is the entire thing.
That's the thing. Otherwise, there'd be no cause to bomb the Houthis in particular. Why would he? If he wanted to cause a problem, he would be doing something to provoke them into blockading more or something. I don't know what exactly that would be in that case. There's already a problem. The demand is there. He doesn't need to create the demand. If you're doing extra work to create a demand that's already satisfied, you're an idiot, which, I mean, fair. So, on Sunday, Waltz appeared on ABC's This Week and contrasted the strikes with the Biden administration's more hesitant approach. Because the Biden administration, while headed by someone who probably had left the domain of consistent sentience, was not advised by people who were in that state. These were people who actually knew how to run a state and how to conduct international relations without self-destructing, making reckless actions because it made them feel big in their private voice chats that then get leaked and embarrass them till the end of time. This is going to be in college textbooks, by the way, forever. The fact that this conversation was leaked in this way, just so you guys know, this is going to be like a thing. There's going to be a module on this in high school history classes. These were not kind of pinprick back and forth what ultimately proved to be feckless attacks, Waltz said. This was an overwhelming response that actually targeted multiple Houthi leaders and took them out. Took them out. Oh boy. It's just wild.
It's unfucking real, man. It's so fucking weird to see. And again, I just have to sit and ask, who did they think they were adding? Like, this is the other part for me that is like, who do they think they're adding to this group that is this guy? Like, there's so many questions I have. So obviously they're using their personal devices because a government device wouldn't allow Signal to be installed. So they're using personal devices to do this. So who added him?
You know what I'm interested in? I'm not familiar with Signal. So there is a notification, presumably like in other social media things, when someone joins the chat, right? When someone is invited, it alerts everybody this person's been invited. Okay. But does that show up if you've been invited after that person has been brought in? Like, do you retain
the history of these chats are pretty around? I mean, again, a lot of these groups have their own rules about how long things just stay in there.
What I'm asking you is, like, if I was invited to this group chat, hypothetically, at this point, would my history of the conversation be relegated to everything that happened after I joined, or would I have access to the history of all activity on the chat?
That's a per group setting.
Okay, so here's my question. Since he clearly didn't scroll up and get the entire history of the chat, right?
Yeah.
We don't have the whole thing here. I have to wonder, and I don't see any screenshots showing so-and-so entered the chat, so maybe we don't even see that. I have to wonder.
I don't think he's putting in certain ones because he's, as he wrote
I understand.
earlier,
I know. I get that. But, like, we're not seeing when people enter the chat either. So if we don't have screenshots of that, I have to wonder, even this, is this the only non-privy person who's in this conversation? Like, is that a possibility? Or here's a question: if they didn't notice his presence,
yep,
is it possible that he was?
It would have been announced when he joined. It would have been announced.
Is it possible that he was misnamed when he was added? That's something else I'm concerned about. Because, like, he didn't report that he scrolled up. He's a reporter. He did scroll up.
I'm sure he did.
Well, my question is,
hang
on. My question is if he could scroll up. That's my question. Because depending on that, like, if he didn't scroll up and the conversation didn't begin with his involvement in it. In fact, let me scroll up very quickly and let me make sure that I'm remembering correctly. Because when he says, let's see. So when we go to the beginning, I received a connection request on Signal on March 11th. When he joined, 2 days later, received a notice that I was to be included in a Signal chat group. It was called the Houthi PC Small Group. Message to the group, Michael Waltz, as follows: team establishing of principles. Okay, so this would be a new group specifically for this thing. So he would have been there from the beginning. Okay.
He probably was, but again, the question is, like, who did the guy think he was inviting? Because it's not like it just grabs people from your fucking address book.
I mean, it would though. It would though if you just had an address book that you just said invite all, right?
No, that's not how that works on Signal.
Well, how does it work on Signal?
You have to choose contacts, particularly.
Right,
and they have to be contacts.
But hang on. But when it says choose contacts, you have a list. There's going to be check marks next to those people on the list. And there may be, on the top, a button that says, all in this group. Right? So if he's doing that, what's interesting is not that, like, oh, he's just adding everyone on his mailing list. No. It's that there's no segregation between people who are not privy to, like, top secret information and people who are. So what I'm wondering is if there's no notice that people have entered the chat, but only notice when they post to the chat, it's possible that this chat actually involved a whole bunch of other people who also shouldn't have been there, besides this one journalist. Right? That's a possibility. And what I'm also wondering is, like,
he'd be able to see everyone who's in it, and he was able to. And he says specifically, there's 18 people in the chat, and he grabbed all their names.
Okay, well then there you go. Okay.
So I can't really show a lot of Signal chats, but like, for example, this is kind of what one of them looks like. Let's see if my camera can zoom in.
Well, the names are also contracted, right? So what did he say?
The names
his name
are what
in the chat?
they've named themselves in Signal and also to you. There's a whole bunch of different stuff that Signal does in order to sort of anonymize people.
So did he say what he was called in the chat?
No.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking is because one of the parts of this that concern me a little bit is because if you're choosing your own name and they don't know who they're adding to the group chat, I have to wonder, is JD Vance JD Vance? Is John Ratcliffe?
No, we actually
But is
don't
this
know,
still
certainly.
nonetheless like an actual chat in which these discussions are taking place for real, right?
It could be their assistant. I mean, again, my money would be that it
No,
is.
you're not hearing what I'm saying. I understand it could be an assistant or whatnot, but it could also be someone, for example, like this Atlantic journalist who decided to call himself something else, right? See what I'm saying? Like, there could actually be people taking part in these conversations and potentially influencing American foreign policy who aren't supposed to be.
Yeah,
but doing so under other people's names.
I can tell you that everyone in that chat not only knows that Mike invited and who invited who. They have that person added. They have that person added to their contacts. They have that person in the name that was shared to the group. Like that's, it's more complex. Signal's a very good app for what it does, and it's intentionally like opaque in a lot of things. It's not, you're not meant to like know the nickname someone's using in a lot of other chats. It's not really connected to a real person. You may not actually ever be connected to someone's real phone number. So it's kind of tough to be able to say. But again, the whole thing
But on the back end, though, who is connected to the Signal chat is not going to be.
We have no idea.
Signal.
We have no idea who any of these people are.
Well, that's my point, though. Is like it may be it's obviously a much looser process to pick who gets invited to these Signal chats if they get to pick their own names. How do we know? For example, hypothetically, let's say some doddering old person who's responsible for populating these lists confuses names, hypothetically.
We could go through adding you to Signal right now if you want to actually see how it works. Because
I can look at that later. But
it's not so much that there is a collating of lists. It's I create a new chat, and then it shows everyone who's in my phone book who is already on Signal if they've enabled people to search for that. And then it matches that person to the name I have in there and imports them. I then create a new group chat, and I go to my thing, and it shows all the people in my contact list that have Signal. And then I tap on the ones that I like and the ones I want, and then it asks a confirmation for all of them, and then it creates a new group chat and shows all of the names. The thing for me, let's assume all of that. I don't think there's a good chance that the writer of this article, Jeffrey Goldberg, isn't in under his own name in someone's phone, because he's a long-term reporter in Washington politics.
I wasn't saying that. I wasn't.
I know you're not saying that. I'm kind of taking the next step and going. When he was added, one that no one went, "Who's that?" I think would be the first thing that like is stunning to me, because the presumption then is everyone who's added is supposed to be there. Don't ask questions, because as far as we know, he was never like kicked back out of the group until the.
Yeah, but I'm not stunned by this, and I'll tell you why. For the exact reason I was bringing that up. These people don't know who's supposed to be in the group chat.
Correct.
These people probably don't know who their staff are. These people probably don't care to know who they're actually working with. A lot of these people, they might be, for all we know, communicating with each other for the first time, which is why they're doing so here and not in an established other means of communication.
Agreed.
So, again, like all of this speaks to there's extreme eagerness to start using the powers at the disposal of the United States government. And I have to wonder, once again, if they are including people in these chats that they don't know or don't recognize the names of or don't recognize immediately they shouldn't be there, is it possible that some of these people, for example, are being included based on a confusion at a higher level? Are they being invited because they've been confused for somebody else? Are they taking it on faith that people are being included correctly? And then are people, for example, being involved in these discussions, having contracted names? We're assuming they're so-and-so. But, I mean, suppose somebody like this journalist said something similar to what J.D. Vance said. Possibly. He's allowed to. He's been invited to the call. Suppose he did. And people didn't recognize because they're not doing any verification after the fact, clearly. And people are responding and discussing people's recommendations for really serious decisions in foreign policy on the basis of inclusions of people that they don't know that shouldn't be there. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, when we start talking about like, because some of these names I hadn't recognized, I forgot. Susie Wiles is Trump's chief of staff, for example. Which again, how do you make the choice? Well, you just add the people you think you're supposed to. And my guess is, and we don't have it here again because I think it would give up too many names. But I'm very curious to see that sort of mass everyone added thing. That because chances are what happened is if this is the Houthi PC small group,
yeah,
there is another chat that is a larger group. like these Signal is it on Discord when you need another channel for a thing that sort of is like a subsection. You just create one because there's no cost to you to create another one. Signal operates a lot like that. There's no cost to creating a new group. Oh, we need that for this one thing. Cool, do it. And then at the end of it, the person who owns it just deletes the entire chat and off you go. And all that information is lost to time. And that's kind of how a lot of Signal groups work. Telegram is very similar. It's why a lot of it's used in crypto scams and things like that, because it gives you that freedom and that space. And so when you start talking about like who's supposed to be in there and how, well, there's a larger group that they just grabbed people and added the new group, and probably multiple people added people to this. And again, that Goldberg is in there with him is confusing on almost every level. It's wild. And Susie Wiles, who's in there, is actually Stephen Miller's boss. So the fact that like she says nothing, but Stephen Miller is the one correcting everyone.
Mm-hmm.
The interplay of politics of this is just mirroring hyper-fascist authoritarian regimes in every single way, because the bureaucracy of stuff is the liberal order, and there's nothing here for that, none at all. It's incredible to watch. I'm just so stunned by it.
So the Signal chat group, I concluded, was almost certainly real. Having come to this realization, one that seemed nearly impossible only hours before, I removed myself from the Signal group, understanding that this would trigger an automatic notification to the group's creator, Michael Waltz, that I had left. No one in the chat had seemed to notice that I was there, and I received no subsequent questions about why I left, or more to the point, who I was. I dare say he wouldn't. I think that would be very embarrassing. Or they just didn't notice, which is more terrifying. Earlier today, I emailed Waltz and sent him a message on his Signal account. I also wrote to Pete Hegseth, John Ratcliffe, Tulsi Gabbard, and other officials. In an email, I outlined some of my questions. Is the Houthi PC small group a genuine Signal thread? Did they know that I was included in this group? Was I, on the off chance, included on purpose? If not, who did they think I was? Did anyone realize who I was when I was added? Or when I was removed, or when I removed myself from the group? Do senior Trump administration officials use Signal regularly for sensitive discussions? Do the officials believe that the use of such a channel could endanger American personnel? It could, very, very easily. Brian Hughes, a spokesman for the National Security Council, responded 2 hours later, confirming the veracity of the Signal group. This appears to be an authentic message chain, and we are reviewing how an inadvertent number was added to the chain.
100% he's kicking his own ass right now for not just staying in there and having someone else like, hey, we've got someone in that Signal chat and we're wondering if it's real. And like, they wouldn't have known.
But you know what?
Fuck, that would have been hilarious.
But here's the thing, though. I think that's important, though, because he needs to signal to the administration, don't send me to prison for life. Don't send me to El Salvador. Because, this is so even invited. This is such a breach of security. It's unreal. This is insane. Hughes wrote, the thread is a demonstration of the deep and thoughtful policy coordination between senior officials. The ongoing success of the Houthi operation demonstrates that there were no threats to troops or national security. Unquote. William Martin, a spokesperson for Vance, said that despite the impression created by the text, this is what I was saying, the vice president is fully aligned with the president. See, I'm reading this as like the VP, two other people in this group chat is like, look guys, he doesn't know what he's doing. Quote, The Vice President's first priority is always making sure that the President's advisors are adequately briefing him on the substance of their internal deliberations, unquote, he said. Quote, Vice President Vance unequivocally supports his administration's foreign policy. The President and the Vice President have had subsequent conversations about this matter and are in complete agreement, unquote. Shall I just finish this off?
It's worth taking a second because I want to spend time on like the nightmare of this, not just in terms of the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request nightmare that this will never ever be known. Like no one will ever actually be able to make a FOIA request for this conversation. They've all probably already left the group and it's gone. And that's it. There's no cracking this conversation. If you didn't know, that's done. Except because these aren't on government secured phones, my first thought goes to Pegasus. And not just Pegasus itself, but like what Pegasus represents, which is Pegasus is malware Israel developed. They're not alone in this. They're not the only ones who do this. That literally just can do whatever it wants on any phone. Like it just did this for a while. And it's not alone. Like it's not the one thing that does this. There's other software that people are aware of. We're seeing this. But all of these phones, because they are consumer grade, all of this shit can be found by anyone or read by anyone. Because as much as Signal is secure user phone to phone, and it is, the moment the phones disconnect and delete, no other things can do that. But the information that's pulled out can be read. And just like you're able to see it and it's able to be copied and pasted or selected, it's rendered as text. These things are insecure because the phone is insecure. And if that's the case, it means that there's actually a good chance that a number of foreign agencies just simply have,
including, by the way, the Israeli government, which would have read in these logs, by the way, the ones that were even just published here, that actually the Trump administration is trying to, get one over them.
Yeah,
like play them actually with respect to Gaza. It's kind of crazy, not to the favor of Gazans, to be clear, but like. And here's the thing, that this is why this is so dangerous. It's not even just a matter of like, oh, they'll see what we're doing right now. It's, no, they'll see what you're thinking generally. They'll see what your orientation is, what your attitude is. They'll see if you view them antagonistically or if you view them cooperatively, if you see them as a future ally or an ongoing contender, even if publicly you're friendly with them. And they're going to make decisions then, quietly, secretly, without signaling to you what they're doing, because they're smarter, based on that information. They're not going to trust you. They're going to put in back doors whenever they enter into any kind of agreement with you or any kind of collective or cooperative action.
And again, this is why you have conversations on secure government devices for all this shit. And this is, if you don't mind, I want to actually read a little bit here because this next bit is about this. Because this is, again, the reporter for The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, has been around the block. This is someone who has been involved in a huge number of government things. There's scandals. He is a reporter, seasoned. So the next sentence is not a light thing for him to say. I have never seen a breach quite like this. It is not uncommon for national security officials to communicate on Signal, but the app is used primarily for meeting planning and other logistical matters, not for detailed and highly confident discussions of pending military action. And of course, I've never heard of an instance in which a journalist has been invited to such a discussion. Conceivably, Waltz, by coordinating a national security-related action over Signal, may have violated several provisions of the Espionage Act, which governs the handling of national defense information, according to several national security lawyers interviewed by my colleague Shane Harris for this story. Harris asked them to consider a hypothetical scenario in which a senior U.S. official creates a signal thread for the express purpose of sharing information with cabinet officials about an active military operation. He did not show them the messages or tell them specifically what had occurred. All of the lawyers said the U.S. official should not establish this thread in the first place. Information about an active operation would presumably fit the law's definition of national defense information. The Signal app is not approved by the government for this. It's actually, as I showed, the DoD had an investigation. They actually cited people, and it was a huge deal. The government has its own system for that purpose. If officials want to discuss military activity, they should go into a specially designed space known as Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, a SCIF. Most cabinet-level national security officials have one installed in their home. This is not a joke, by the way. Not to date myself, but this is like the cone of silence. This is the room that it's a skiff. It's intended to be sort of separated from everything, so you can have these conversations in a secure way, and which suggests these officials were sharing information about an active military operation. They could have been moving around in public. Had they lost their phones, had they been stolen, the potential risk to national security would have been severe. And that's just assuming one conversation. And again, we have to assume that there are, if they're doing it with an active military strike, everything else has a signal group.
Hey, Brooks,
there's no reason not to think that.
I'd like us to take a look at this, please.
Sure.
It's in submissions. Just click on that, and can we watch that together?
Oh, sure. Why not?
Click the link. Don't click it in Discord.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
By the way, just for the record, guys,
God,
I actually had to walk. I did actually have to walk through Brooks on how to do stream elements, so I actually was ahead of them on that one. People were joking, like, you wouldn't have to explain that to Brooks.
I've never used stream elements. Like, that's just the end of the question, I think. I've just never used stream elements, so not a service I've got, not a thing I'm used to in any capacity.
Apparently,
I am sorry that it makes me seem stupid to everybody.
I'm not.
Oh. Yeah, I know you're not. All right.
Maybe up the volume first. Might be kind of quiet.
It is full.
All right.
Apparently, the standard operating procedure inside the Clinton Secretary of State office was to send emails that couldn't otherwise be printed to the maid to print them out of a secure area or from a secure area and then hand them off. Any security professional, military, government, or other.
A maid that had security clearance, by the way. Like, he's saying maid here in a very, but it was an assistant. We know about this because, again, Republicans did a lot of investigation into this.
Otherwise, would be fired on the spot for this type of conduct and criminally prosecuted for being so reckless with this kind of information. The fact that she wouldn't be held accountable for this.
Yeah, this is actual head Secretary of Defense. So.
This is the guy who was in that leaked.
I think blows the mind of anyone who's held our nation's secrets dear, who's had a top secret clearance like I have and others, who know that even one hiccup causes a problem, let alone a standard.
But to be fair, at this point, I think, was he still an alcoholic and rapist? Because I'm pretty sure he was doing that actively. Was he an alcoholic already? Was he drunk during this?
Him too.
I'm trying to remember if he was drunk during this. He enjoyed himself. Mr. Hegseth did. He's got his scotch somewhere, I'm sure.
Oh, right. Forgot about that.
Got his scotch somewhere. But yeah, this is about Hillary Clinton's mail server, how they handle classified everything. Again, the presumption is, it's from 2016, yeah. The presumption is, for me, anytime Republicans complain about a thing, it is projection. That's it. I have no reason to believe in anything else. I have no reason to believe that it is anything but projection for everything.
Well, I'll give you a reason.
Okay.
That would suggest that OPSEC is actually something that exists in his mind as a thing he actually thinks about and has a coherent understanding of, that he is aware guiltily in the back of his head he's not engaging in. I think that would take a level of awareness that he lacks. I don't think it's projection. I think these people, once again, are parroting each other. They're signaling to each other, yeah, we're all on the same side. And I think the problem is the conditions of doing that don't involve actually understanding any of the words that you're using. And I think the problem is that this guy, this moron, drunk, rapist, freak idiot, is where he is because he signaled to the right people that I will do it and say what you want me to do and say. And as a result of that, you have people like that who are now making critical decisions in terms of national security, foreign policy, and so on and so forth. And they don't understand how any of that shit works. And, like, in terms of this, like, if only this was printed out, frankly. Because, A, you'd have a record of it, so at the very least it would be somewhat more legal than this. But B, that would not immediately be sent to a journalist in another part of the country like that, to then be or to God knows who else, to just then be sent off wherever else. And as you were saying, like with respect to Pegasus, like, we're taking it for granted that this is all being done on the other end of things, on like official hardware that's protected. But What if it's not? What if some of these people have phones that they're using for this that aren't specifically for that reason, which would seem to be consistent with the use of this app in the first place?
Yep.
Like, if they're doing that, and like, for example, keystrokes are being recorded, so they can see what they're typing to each other. That's not good. Or what they're typing and deleting. That's not good. Yeah.
Well, no, and again, the intelligence agencies who have this software, and this includes our own, like just it's everyone, but the intelligence agencies who have these capabilities don't use this. Like, this is not the kind of thing people have a misunderstanding. Israel doesn't care about this in the sense of, oh, we're going to get consternation and angry. Because to be frank, I think the IDF internationally has a better understanding of how things work. The ability for them to use all this information to then bargain or shift or play with these games and build their position within other partnerships. That's 100% how this information gets used. It's about brokering knowledge and information. And again, with that, just because I want to continue it to a little bit more, there's another potential problem. This is to the thing that I started about, I still say is, to me, there's no good side to this. This is like, there's layers of horrifying. But part of everything that matters when it comes to war or the government, I'm sensitive specifically to the way that things are recorded. I worked lightly on Mike Gravel's presidential campaign. The Mike Gravel was the guy who read in the Pentagon Papers to Congress, and the Pentagon Papers specifically was basically showing that the president and his people and the defense secretaries actively lied to the American people about what they were doing across the board in Vietnam. And it really is one of the things that helped basically completely end the war. It's one of the big factors because it just showed that Congress wasn't being listened to. It enraged them. People at home were, it was a huge deal. But that's because we had the papers. That's because we had the Pentagon Papers. And now here we are. And this is one of the things I mentioned Signal does that's really particular. Waltz set some of the messages in the Signal group to disappear after 1 week and some after 4. That raises, basically you can set, in Signal, you can say everything self-destructs constantly, or you can have it 1 week, 1 day, there's a bunch of stuff. But this basically means that federal records law, which sounds simple, and it sounds bureaucratic, by not having these things held, it gives absolutely no recourse for us to have any meaningful discussion about anything that happens underneath the Trump administration in any capacity. And the entirety of what all of these supposed Republicans and supposed right-wing people kept yelling about is how secretive the Bidens are, or how they're hiding things, or how they're not sharing enough. And I'll share everything. I'll share everything with you. I just love all of you people. Bullshit. The opposite is true. This is, again, like it was the first time, quickly becoming the single most hidden system of government that we've ever had, in a way that there is no paperwork. And imagine all of the worst people in history, if we had no paperwork, how much that changes what happens afterwards.
But, just as icing on the cake, they still have worse internal security than governments that recorded everything. And a big part of this, too, is going to be, there's also an additional reason why you record everything. And that's that so you have a stable, coherent, referenceable timeline of what you did, what you're doing, what your decisions were, what the reasons were, so on and so forth. Who had this attitude? Who had this attitude? The scariest thing about this, too, is that these people are now going to be making follow-up conversations on the basis of memory. If these are not being recorded in an additional way, which I guarantee you they're not, they're going to be making these decisions on the basis of memory.
Yes, they will.
The president is going to be making these decisions on the basis of memory. A senile, crazy man is going to be making decisions on the basis of other crazy people who have no clue what they're doing.
And we won't be able to, not that we ever do charge anyone with war crimes, but there is, and it's just here, this is just one example, but again, we should assume they're using Signal in this way for everything if it's this quick and this fast for them to pop up a convo like this. Across the board, we are not going to have records of what was done, so they get to write the story. Like, it's the opposite of everything that is about transparency or what you could call libertarian open government ideals. They're all full of shit with this one. It's completely the opposite. It's incredible. It's really awful.
Once again, like, I think what this speaks to is this is an administration of people who see themselves as underdogs and victims, who's only, you know what this reminds me of? House of Cards is a fun show that is actually really stupid, but it did something that I like. The new one, not the old one, which was actually pretty good. The new one with what's that pedophile's name? Yeah.
He's not actually. He wasn't convicted, and don't. Yeah.
No.
Kevin Spacey. Not a real
Kevin
thing.
Spacey. Was that actually confirmed to be not a real thing?
I mean,
because I recall very distinctly his initial response to it was to say he was coming out as a homosexual male, right?
He denied it and came out as a homosexual. Again, I'm not big on the drama thing generally, but this one is kind of, he's not, again, calling him that is, one, it doesn't even fit the thing. Like, as a thing. Doesn't even fit the claim. But yeah, please continue. It's Kevin Spacey.
Okay. The one with Kevin Spacey, I'm going to actually fucking look this up now after this, which I don't like. The one with Kevin Spacey, the first 2 seasons are you're watching this brilliant strategist just maneuver his way right into the White House. And at the end, he pounds the desk, and it's like, yeah. He does all these cool little maneuvers. He like does these like these cynical speeches he doesn't believe in. You see him like monologuing to himself about how he's successfully tricking everybody. That's season 1 and 2. And then season 3, he's unable to do anything. The entire season is him getting into talks with the Russian president.
Yep.
And being completely stumped and led by the tail. He's stumped and led by the tail domestically, can't get anybody to work with him, and so on and so forth. And a major part of that is that that skill set to maneuver yourself in a hidden backrooms game of just a popularity contest, essentially, doesn't translate over to actually managing things. And I think it's what we're kind of seeing here. These are people who fundamentally never thought that they would be in this position, or never thought of themselves as in this position. They thought of themselves as people who were against the current administration. And now that they're really hard to use military power and to make executive decisions that have wide-reaching consequences. And they're talking about it like they're excited, like it's a kid with a new toy. But they don't know how to do the thing where you get along with people you don't like and you let things continue that make you feel uncomfortable because you recognize that, hey, there's a massive, delicate balance of things. And if you pull a needle out from any point, something falls in to fill the space and the whole structure reshapes. And there's no concept of that. Like, at all. There's no concept of that on demonstration here. They don't understand how security works. Why? Because they think security means only the in people are invited.
Well, and that's the last line of the paragraph, the whole story, because he talks through sort of the definitions of leaks, but it's that last bit, and I love the way he ends it. All along, members of the Signal Group were aware of the need for secrecy and operation security. In his text detailing aspects of the forthcoming attack on Houthi targets, Hegseth wrote to the group, which at the time included me, quote, "We are currently clean on OPSEC," which is like, for someone who is not part of the operation to see we are clean on OPSEC is basically kind of art. Like, as far as it goes, it's basically art. You there?
I am. I'm just reading.
Shall we move to the next subject?
We're actually hitting the 2-hour mark. I thought you thought we would get through 3.
Well, I kind of think it's worth. Well, we can save stuff for tomorrow. This was.
I think we should save. I think we should save stuff for tomorrow because I'd rather go in depth on stuff than rush it.
Yeah, it's fair. We could also just do another hour, but we can save it.
I can't.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So I think that then becomes our outro and our ending. Look, man, this was 2 hours. This was a fucking. We knew this. We knew this was going to be a long one, though.
I freaking told you there is no way in hell we are doing this carefully and well, and not spending at least 30 to 45 minutes on it. And I think, frankly, like this is easily a 2-hour conversation.
I would agree.
Because this is like,
and it has layers and layers when you start talking about the hacking of phones and Pegasus on top of it. Because everyone who's in defense, like people who are in business, by the way, I know people in business who won't discuss business matters on phones that they've traveled to certain countries with. Like they have burners and phones that they travel and use specifically in those countries because the way that spyware and malware and other things get installed, like it's not. This is a thing people know. And for these guys to be doing this at this level and inviting people at this style it's mind blowing to me. And
you know what I'd be interested to look into very quickly before we head off. I want to see what the response has been from Trump sympathetic media and channels to this. What has the discussion been like, or have they just ignored it? My suspicion is they just ignored it, but
generally speaking, I'm going to say they just ignored it, but I'm also not going to live search on these people. Let's find out. Let's find out.
See.
Houthi or probably Yemen signal.
Oh, we got a Fox News one. Here, I'll pop this in the chat. That's pretty big. So right here. Trump officials accidentally texted Atlantic journalist about military strikes and apparent security breach. National Security Council spokesperson, quote, "We are reviewing how an inadvertent number was added to the chain," end quote.
Of course they are.
I just want to see what the commentary is like.
The comments.
The commentary.
Actually, I think the comments.
I'm concerned about looking at the comments on screen, to be honest.
Oh, there are no comments.
There are lots of comments actually. Pause it. You got the music. You got the video playing.
Yeah, no, I was watching it. Oh, I already know. This is where he went. The Atlantic's trash. No one reads it anymore. I don't care. I haven't heard about that. That's his response already.
Wait, actually? Hang on. Well, yeah. Let's hear it. Hang on.
Very sensitive material through Signal and included in Atlantic report.
Here, Senator, a bit more.
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of the Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine.
Not anymore. It's not.
Nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
having to do with what? Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
With the Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis? Right. Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective.
Jesus Christ. He doesn't even know.
I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it.
I believe him when he says he doesn't know. I don't think he knows anything about it.
He has no clue whatsoever.
He had no prepared way to respond to that. Oh my God. He wasn't even briefed on that effectively afterwards. That's insane. That's actually insane. I'm not seeing the same comments you are. I'm hearing like down below in the conversation. This would be a stunning breach of security. I'm a former JAG officer. I've helped investigate numerous allegations of classified information spillages, and I've never heard of anything this egregious. Totally unacceptable, and arguably worse security lapse was that Trump claims to have heard nothing about this until a reporter asked him about it this afternoon. I agree. This is insanity.
It is that level of crazy.
I don't think he's deflecting. I think he legitimately didn't know. Because that answer wasn't just.
He had no clue. No, I'm fairly certain he had no clue. I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out what actually the right is trying to say about this, though. And I'm not even seeing.
I don't think they have anything to say about this. I think generally the deflection is they're not blaming Trump directly as often. They're blaming some person in the group that needs to be fired. But like, dear God.
Oh, Richard Hanania has a response.
Okay. Is Richard Hanania pro-Trump? I thought he was one of these.
Well, I mean, look, his response is, I like the idea of them seeing a Jewish name in their context and deciding
he was
has to be
pro-Trump.
involved.
I couldn't remember because I knew he was.
That's like he's just an anti-Semitic shithead, as it turns out, is the response. I don't even understand like some of these. Like they're not even trying, as far as I can tell, to really defend it. Oh, they're going after Hegseth. They're going after Hegseth and Waltz. That's what they're doing. The hard right. They're blaming them for doing this and making Trump look bad. And other anti-Semitic stuff because they added a guy who.
And you know what? Can I be honest with you? I'm happy with that outcome, and I'll tell you why. The more individuals in Trump's inner circle are unhappy being in Trump's inner circle, the happier I am. I want the instability. I want the instability between these people to be at maximum.
Oh no, it's significant for sure.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Hi,
a happy thought.
Oh, I don't have a happy thought, but I have a secret to tell you.
No, it's about a happy thought. Hello?